Hey guys, James here and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, this channel is all about sharing my lifelong love of cars and everything related to cars with you guys. Today we are in the 2019 Mini Cooper S iconic trim level with a 6-speed manual transmission, and I am super excited. Why? Because I've driven a lot of cars in my day and I've owned a lot of cars too, but this is the very first time I'm driving a Mini Cooper. Now, a lot of people say that Mini Coopers have this go-kart handling. In fact, that's part of their marketing copy. And so today I want to find out if that's actually true. I'm going to drive this thing, give you my first impressions, but first let's talk about this interior because the iconic trim level is pretty sweet. When I hopped into this car, my first impression was that, wow, this is a really high quality interior. I love the steering wheel. It's got this chunkiness and the leather feels like it'll just last forever. Much more so than my Miata, which already kind of shows some signs of wear, even though it's got half the mileage that this car does. As you know, BMW owns Mini, and this interior oozes BMW quality, in my opinion. It's really, really good. This car is equipped with wireless CarPlay and wireless charging for your phone. Now, unfortunately, the screen for the head unit screen can't go full screen CarPlay. The left 2/3 of the screen is CarPlay, and then the right is like auxiliary information, which is kind of bizarre, and you can't really turn that off. Apparently you can like hack the head unit to have a full screen CarPlay display. A little bit weird, but it works extremely well. I've driven this car around for several hours, and the music streaming from my phone dropped only twice. Very, very little brief instances where it just dropped the audio and then it came right back. So that's pretty much on par with the wireless CarPlay systems that I've experienced in, more premium brands like BMW and Audi. It probably is the same system as the BMW wireless CarPlay system, let's be honest. But yeah, it just drops like for like a split second and it comes right back. No big deal. Now the wireless charger in here is pretty cool. It's so BMW and so Germanic in how over-engineered it is. And then I'll show you right now. It works really well. Again, there is a slight drawback with this as well, which is that my iPhone 12 mini gets pretty warm when it's doing wireless charging. And because it's inside this center console, when I get to my destination and I pull my phone out, it is piping hot. So that's a little bit unfortunate. I wish there was a little bit more ventilation. I don't know if that's an issue with other people's phones, but that's certainly something that I've experienced. This car also has this glorious, like enormous, like panoramic two-piece sunroof situation. I love it. It's so cool to be able to like really have all this access to the sky. The drawback is that the glass is not very tinted, and this like mesh stuff that they put here is simply not enough to keep the heat out. I mean, today has been in the upper 70s, which is really not that warm, but I've been running the AC kind of ragged to just keep it cool in here. So be aware of that and make sure that it works for you if you're interested in the, the panoramic roof here. All right, let's start this thing up and go for a drive. Setting off in the 2019 Mini Cooper S, I gotta say, the first thing that I noticed is how agile this thing is. The front end is ridiculous. It's so responsive. When you just turn the steering wheel, it feels so direct. And normally I'm not a big fan of really fast steering ratios, which this has, but I like it here because it suits the character of the car so well. Over smooth pavement, it's actually really nice. There's not a lot of wind noise. It's pretty darn civilized. But as soon as you get over bumps over a certain size, this thing just really crashes over those bumps. Driveways that I've never had a problem with, this thing will go bam, 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 bam as the four wheels go up the driveway. If I were buying a Mini Cooper, I would probably go for the 16-inch rims if it was a car that I wanted to use every day. If I was just looking for something to have fun with on Saturdays or something like that, then I think the 17s are just fine. One huge difference between this car's handling characteristics and, say, my Miata is this thing stays pretty flat in the corners. I think it's like, to me, it's kind of like the perfect amount of body roll. Earlier, I was actually going on a highway off-ramp at high speed, and and I felt totally confident just bombing down this off ramp. And what happened was the stability control light started flashing at me, and I had no idea that it was actually on the very limit of adhesion. So I was a little surprised there, but the flatness of the chassis, the utter sense of control that you get is really astounding in this car. It's pretty fantastic. The engine in this Mini Cooper S is a twin power turbocharged turbocharged 4-cylinder engine. Let's start with the good stuff. This engine feels incredibly effortless when you're just kind of going around town, when you want to merge onto the freeway, when you want to like go up to 3-digit speeds. Not that I tried that. But it's just incredibly effortless. Doesn't feel like it ever breaks a sweat. What about the limitations of these turbocharged engines? Well, the first thing that I'm not totally sold on is the throttle response or the turbo lag, that combination there. When you press the pedal, there's this sort of rubber bandy effect where it's like, all right, there's your torque. It's not very sudden. It does ramp up gradually, which is really helpful because you can kind of anticipate it. You learn to anticipate it and you can kind of live with it. Another sort of drawback of this engine though is that, look, the red line is, well, it's not particularly high. It's just north of 6,000 RPM. This engine is not very rewarding past, say, 5,000 RPM. I actually love, for normal cruising, I love this engine between 2,000 and 3,000 RPM. You get tons of torque in that range. And then for spirited driving, I like it around 4,000 to 5,000 RPM. And that's kind of, that's it. I short shift around 5,000 and that's fine. But on a day-to-day basis, I have to say this twin power turbo engine is one of the very, very best. Let's talk about the manual transmission and the sort of overall shifting experience in this car. I think this is a really good manual transmission and sort of shifting experience. Most BMW manual transmissions that I've driven, and I've driven a lot of them, feel sort of rubbery. In my opinion, sort of the gold standard of shifters is something like an S2K, where it feels very mechanical. It feels like you're moving pieces of metal in the drivetrain, which you are, but you want if you can feel that in the shifting action, that's amazing. This one is a little bit under that. It doesn't feel quite like you're moving pieces of metal around, but it feels like you're moving plastic around. So it's a little bit chintzier feeling, but it's still rigid. It still feels precise, and as you're moving through the gates, it feels like the shifter has its, very defined paths and gates to go through, which in my opinion is way better than most of the BMWs I've driven. Unlike the shifter, which in my opinion is kind of noticeably better than its BMW cousins, the clutch pedal feels very classically BMW, with two differences. One is that it's lighter, and number two is that the engagement point is, the bite point on the pedal travel is a little bit lower, which I like both of those things. I actually think it's great. You get enough feel in the clutch pedal to know exactly what you're doing, when it's going to bite down. The first couple times I tried heel toe, I didn't quite get it, but once I sort of got used to the pedals and kind of where they are, man, so easy. So I'm really enjoying that aspect of the shifting experience as well. All right, the $1 million question, or should I say the $35,000 question, because that's kind of the price of a Mini Cooper that's got some features these days. Well, does this thing drive like a go-kart? I would say as much as a car can drive, a modern car can drive like a go-kart, yeah, this thing kind of does. It's not quite as raw as something like an ND Miata. I mean, that kind of makes sense. That car is more focused. This car is just an amazing little everyday car that I would love to drive around the city. Now, one of my buddies has the electric Mini, and I would love to try that at some point because I think this car could be even more brilliant with an electric powertrain. Just that immediate throttle response combined with this extremely just agile and willing chassis with that incredible front end that just like, at the slightest provocation will just like send you into a corner. I think that sounds like an amazing combination. I just got a Mazda CX-30 as a daily, but this thing is making me want to convince my girlfriend to get a Mini. Alright guys, well thank you so much for joining me today on my first ever drive of a Mini Cooper. This car is super fun, and after I stop recording I'm going to drive in it some more. Hopefully you found this video interesting, informative, whether you're in the market for a Mini or you're just kind of intrigued by Minis. These are cool cars. They're kind of fun to learn about, and they're very unique. So hopefully you found that entertaining, and if you did, hit that like button and also hit the subscribe button for more videos that I have coming out on this channel. Thanks again for joining me today, guys. I will see you next time. A lot of reviewers out there have commented on how